What's going on, people? This is Tasherre Risay. Welcome back to the Beat Breakdown. I believe this is number 8. This one in particular is pretty special, and I have to admit, I'm very proud of this one. So, for week number 41 of the weekly homework podcast, we did this thing called I Challenge You. I got pulled for my man Crooked Mystery Jazz, who is a DJ slash producer from the UK. He also runs a radio show. He's part of a team that I like to call with another gentleman by the name of Mr. Legacy, and they do a radio show on different drums with a Z.co.uk on Thursdays and Saturdays. They're big electronic and house and techno and drum and bass fans, and they even make this music, of course. So the whole premise of I Challenge You was you pull somebody's name and you have to challenge them to to do something that would take them out of their lane, so to speak. So Jazz gets me, and as soon as I saw it, I knew what was going to happen. He challenged me to do basically a drum and bass beat, and man, this was difficult in the beginning. It took me like a good 5 tries to get it right. Once I got it, I nailed it. So I actually opened up drum racks. I chose some drums, which is right here. Now, drum and bass is anywhere between, I believe, 140 and 170, around that area. So this is the pattern that I came up with in the beginning. And this is actually the second pattern with the fill-in. And I put this one first. And here's the first pattern right here. Just pretty straight. So I got the note length in there. I actually have the randomizer in there, and it's only working in one part. And you may or may not hear it, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Drum rack. There's actually the different sample. A little EQ. A little auto filter and dark hall, which you'll see that this thing right here, you actually see this as automation. This comes up in another part of the song. And I put the vinyl plug-in on there to kind of dirty it up slightly, because the drums sounded a little too clean. I wanted to give them just a little bit of a crack, a little bit of distortion. And of course, I put the limiter on there. The biggest thing with drum and bass that I've seen, because once again, I'm no expert at this. This is the first time I ever did it, is the it uses a lot of drum breaks. The most notable being the amen or amen break. They don't play it straight out in most cases. It's a lot of chopping involved and rearranging and just making it sound a little different. I was being very silly because I started out with the drum break first, but then I'm thinking in the mind of, I'm trying to make a hip hop track. So I'm using my machine controller and I'm trying to get it, especially at that tempo, and I'm just not hitting it at all. I'm like, man, why am I not getting it? It just didn't make any sense until I actually got in here and I started using the piano roll, and I started actually putting the notes in, like so. And man, when I figured that part of the game out, oh boy. So now this is starting to come together. It's starting to sound like, somewhat of a D&B track. One thing he informed me of, there's different subgenres in that particular genre, and he wanted me to do the uplifting kind of UK rave aspect of it, which actually has like really nice piano melodies and chords and stuff like that, maybe some strings. I ended up opening Contact Native Instruments, one of my favorite plugins. I got the Concert Grand out of the Factory Sounds. What I ended up doing is I grabbed the chord, which is in MIDI effects chord, and I grabbed the 5th chord and ended up playing this. I really like how that sounds. This sounds really cool. And another thing you'll see is I actually have the fifth chord. I have the instrument in there. I actually have a phaser and a flanger that actually has some automation. Once again, we'll get to that a little bit later. A little EQ and a ping pong delay, just got it bouncing back and forth. And I really, really, really like how that turned out. Another huge part of D&B, you have the drums. The next thing is the bass. Took me a while to find the proper bass. I ended up going down to Reactor, which Razor is in Reactor, and found this little number. And this is the sequence how I played it. Kind of typical of D&B. I've heard it, you know, something similar to this several times, and that was the thing. It fit as I was playing it. And you can see I have the glue compressor in there. They got to give it a little boost. I had the bass roundup plug-in from Ableton. Gave it a little bit more presence as far as the bass itself, and I actually put an auto filter on there. That's how it sounds without it. And I want to keep that deepness and that roundness to it, so that's why we have that. Now I'm feeling really good about the whole process. I'm like, okay, this is finally coming together, because this was over a few days of me trying. I would go in, play with it for like an hour or so, wasn't satisfied with it. I said, screw it, go work on something else, and I come back another day. It came down to Saturday afternoon, once again, when it was almost due, that it actually all started coming together. One thing that I know is normally in drum and bass is like sample stabs. And I actually have, I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a company, I don't know if they're still operating, but they were called E-Labs, and they did a bunch of like sample records and CDs and stuff like that. And they had this thing called Smokers Relight and Smokers Delight, and I have a couple of those. And I grabbed a bunch of stabs and put them in a drum rack. There's some really nice ones in here. And I definitely wanted to, you know, be as true to the art form as possible. So I grabbed a bunch of those, and I was just trying to figure out which ones worked. And I actually found a couple of guitars, and man, I think it worked perfectly. So yeah, you see the sample itself in the drum rack. Here's the EQ8 and a little simple delay on both of the tracks. Yeah, this is I'm getting all excited once more. So anyhow, as I'm building the track up, at this point, I start sequencing it as you're looking at it right now on the screen. I got the intro, then it actually brings in the bass, then it actually does a drop. Matter of fact, let's do this. The Unstoppable. Yeah, love how that goes. So I started sequencing. And here's another thing I normally use, and you've seen it in some of my other videos. I normally use the session view, but I used arrangement view for pretty much this whole track for this particular iteration of it, the one that actually worked. Once again, I was thinking as a hip hop track, but this worked perfectly doing everything over here because I can get more improvisation in, and I think it worked perfectly. So next up, I wanted to do something for the hook, and I opened up a few different iterations of Reactor. I have there's Filthy Thing. This one has DuckTales and The Prisoner. And I actually played all of these separately at first, but then something told me that I should probably play them all together. And when I stacked them, this is what I came up with. Now, I think that sounds pretty sick, but I wanted to kind of stick to the rules that that JK gave me, CMJ, keeping everything kind of uplifting and not as dark or spooky, mysterious, how you want to say it. So what I ended up doing is routing the audio for all of those to track 12, recorded them, and I think I came up with something that's pretty freaking cool. So I did a little EQ. Little overdrive. Little reverb. And there was one missing element. Once I added the auto filter, the whole game changed. Something hit me to go back into my past 10 years ago, to be exact. Bro, I used to be a rapper. Not really gonna talk about that right now. But I made an album called Intervisions. I made a song called Critical. And suddenly it hit me that I should use certain parts from Critical. So what I did is actually took some of the hook from Critical. I mean, actually some of the loop from Critical and used it in the hook. Slowed it down a little bit. Yeah. Once I put that in there, put that along with the hook. And you can see a little compression, a little saturation, EQ. Of course, I got to have my auto pan. I got to have it going back and forth and a little reverb, and that's what it turned into. And this thing is just building up more and more and more. Put it all together. And got an idea to do this. Yeah, a little stuttering in there. Another great thing about drum and bass, or another element of drum and bass, is the drum break. And I wanted to do something special that I've seen in many different songs. I wanted to actually have a break of my own. So now that I understand that it works better when I'm in the piano roll, and I can actually put the notes in there, I came up with, in my opinion, one of the illest drum solos of all time. Actually broke everything down, where I actually have a bass drop come in right after that. And what I was telling you before about the filtering and the automation, did that little filtering on the drum break, did a little bit on the bass line itself, and then actually broke out some of my vocals from Critical, from the hook. And got a pan pretty wide to beef it up a little bit, because when I played that on top of the beat, it kind of drowned out the voices. So what I ended up doing is going on top of it and recorded me actually saying the hook. You've been waiting too long for somebody that gon' be doing a typical mediocre rap you listen and to. Pitched it down to match. Happen to be that individual to step up. Now the situation is critical. that is it, my people. Thank you for letting me rant and rave about this stuff and relive me putting this beat together, even though it was only, a couple weeks ago. But man, I really enjoyed how this thing turned out. And shout out to JK, shout out to Mr. Legacy, who actually gave me a lot of love and said this is exactly what they were hoping to hear. So validation, that makes me feel damn good. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will continue this throughout. There's going to be more new, and there's going to be some of my older beats that I'm going to go through just like this. If there's something in particular that you know of, you want me to go through, let me know, and I will do my best to make it happen. If you're interested in any of the Computer Music Academy stuff, come on over to the website or go to the Computer Music Academy YouTube channel and check out all the craziness. On that note, I'm done for now. I'll talk to you next time. See ya.
The Unstoppable.